This has been one of the toughest weeks for Drake in recent memory, with everything going on in the music world. It's clear that Drake is frustrated and upset in ways we haven't seen before. With the Super Bowl hype and all the drama surrounding his current tour, it's evident that Drake is growing increasingly irritable. For the first time in a long while, Drake isn't holding back his anger. In the past, he's been more subtle about his beefs, especially with figures like Kendrick Lamar and LeBron James, using indirect jabs. But this time, he's done with the sneak dissing, and his anger is aimed at someone he feels is more pathetic than him, DJ Khaled. So, what happened between Khaled and Drake? Khaled tried to hype up his new album with the promise of 2 new Drake tracks. However, this didn't sit well with Drake, who wasn't pleased at all. In fact, Drake's reaction was so strong that Khaled ended up canceling the release of his album entirely. Before we dive deeper into this situation, don't forget to like and subscribe for more updates. Now, looking at the wider picture in hip-hop, the industry has never been so divided. From the epic Drake and Kendrick beef to tensions with Future, it's clear that rivalries are at an all-time high. And now, Khaled is getting caught up in all of this mess. As someone who's built his career on collaborations, Khaled's success relies on bringing together different artists to create mega hits. But with the way things are going, Khaled's efforts to release a new album have backfired in spectacular fashion. The new album, which was announced with a ridiculous 7-minute trailer, was quickly derailed because of issues both in the trailer itself and the problematic captions Khaled posted. It seems like Khaled believes he can bring all these artists together despite the tension, but is out of touch with reality. In his announcement, Khaled made a lot of bold claims. He referenced Jay-Z, implying he might be featured on the album, and even hinted that Rihanna could join the project. But the most notable part was when Khaled talked about having 2 Drake songs on the album. He went as far as to suggest that Drake was back in the studio and that they were working together again, which was a huge stretch considering the ongoing tensions. What makes this situation even more ridiculous is that Khaled was openly teasing collaborations between artists who are either on bad terms with each other or have serious beef, like Drake and Jay-Z, and Drake and Rihanna. So, instead of the album release hyping up fans, it only added fuel to the fire and made it all blow up in Khaled's face. The optics of this whole situation already looked terrible from the start, especially considering Khaled was hyping up the idea of new music with Drake, something he made a point to emphasize in both his trailer and the captions. Prior to Drake's response, fans were excited at the thought of Drake collaborating with someone who still has a strong presence in the music industry. This would have been the first major artist to publicly support Drake after the decline in his popularity. But before anything could fully materialize, Drake responded to Khaled's over-the-top announcement by joking that if there's a Drake featured on the album, it must be Drake Bell, because it certainly wasn't him. I'll admit, it was a pretty funny move by Drake. At first, people weren't sure if Drake was just playing along, poking fun at his reputation of being on the outs with industry figures like Khaled, something that's become apparent from his recent tour. However, it quickly became clear that Drake wasn't joking around. He was serious. Khaled then proceeded to remove every post and trailer related to the new album, and in an unusually quiet move. Because Khaled is known for being loud and boastful, he essentially made it clear that this collaboration was no longer happening. Whether the album has been fully cancelled or just delayed, it's clear that the 2 Drake tracks Khaled was most excited about are no longer a part of the project. This whole situation is insane. It seems that Drake's response has left Khaled with no choice but to backpedal, with the removal of his entire album announcement. By saying it wasn't him on the record, Drake essentially told Khaled that he would never work with him again. This has forced Khaled, known for his attention-grabbing antics, to cancel an album that, frankly, no one was asking for in the first place. What's interesting is that this situation makes some of Drake's diss track lyrics seem more prophetic. He had already hinted that he would stop giving out features after certain beefs, and it looks like he's standing by that claim now. Even though Drake's actions with people like Future, Metro Boomin, and Kendrick Lamar may not have been entirely justified, this is an entirely different story. Khaled, who is notorious for chasing clout, tried to use Drake to boost his album, but conveniently stayed silent when Drake needed support the most. This only highlights how out of touch Khaled is with the current state of the industry. What's unfolding right now reveals that for every major failure, like Drake, there's always someone even worse waiting in the wings, like DJ Khaled. With the way things are going, It's clear that Khaled is desperately clinging to relevance by trying to use Drake to elevate his album, despite the fact that this whole attempt has backfired spectacularly. The desperation is evident, from thinking a Drake feature in 2025 would even be valuable, to trying to capitalize on it after doing absolutely nothing when Drake actually needed support. No matter how you look at it, Khaled's attempt to use Drake for this album has been a total failure, and now he's left with nothing but embarrassment after Drake shut him down. The optics of this entire situation are just bad. You can't help but wonder how far Khaled's desperation goes, as he filmed the whole album trailer around the idea of a Drake feature, only for Drake to immediately call him out. After that, Khaled's album rollout crumbled, with every mention of Drake's involvement quickly disappearing. Essentially, this whole move backfired, and now Khaled's project is either delayed or straight up cancelled. The desperation of trying to lure in Drake for this project and getting publicly shut down is a new level of cringe. What's worse, Khaled has been exposed as someone who's so out of touch that he's still trying to get a hit with Drake, even though that formula hasn't worked for years. The last major hit he had with Drake was For Free off Major Key, almost a decade ago. So why is he still clinging to that hope in 2025? When you look at it from every angle, it's clear Khaled was expecting a lot more from this situation. Was he really that delusional to think that Drake would just jump at the chance to work with him? Or did he think he could manipulate Drake into being a feature for his album after staying silent when Drake was facing his lowest moment? Either way, Khaled's desperation is palpable, and it makes him look even more washed in an industry that has long moved past him. Khaled's continued reliance on past connections like Jay, Rick Ross, Rihanna, and of course Drake just goes to show how irrelevant he's become. Trying to pull these massive names into his project in 2025 is only going to make them distance themselves even further from him. It's one thing to have the dream of bringing these icons together, but it's another to ignore the ongoing tension and feuds that exist between them. No one is going to want to come together on a Khaled album when these artists are constantly at odds. And when Drake makes it clear that he's not working with Khaled, that's basically the final nail in the coffin. Khaled's attempt to use Drake and Rihanna as the face of his album ended up backfiring in the worst way possible. It wasn't just a failed rollout, it was a complete embarrassment for Khaled. His attempt to make it look like he had Drake songs on his album and build hype around that quickly fell apart when Drake publicly denied it. So what was Khaled even thinking? Did he lie about having those Drake tracks? Did he expect Drake to just throw his name onto the project, even after not being there for Drake during his difficult moments? Whatever Khaled's plan was, it failed miserably, and now has been left looking even worse than Drake in the public eye. This whole situation shows that Khaled's time in the spotlight has officially passed. With his desperate attempt to use Drake now exposed as a failure, it's hard to see how he can ever come back from this. Khaled's career has officially run its course, and no amount of trying to cling to past glory can change that. The lesson here is clear. Even in a time when Drake is at his lowest, there are still people out there who can make him look like the winner. And in this case, Khaled has proven himself to be a bigger clown than anyone could have imagined. Drake and Khaled's ongoing drama has really brought some important revelations to light about the state of the music industry, especially within hip-hop. It's telling that Khaled has decided to completely shelve his album just because Drake wouldn't release the 2 tracks he promised for it. It's almost like this whole situation is forcing Khaled to confront the fact that the industry is evolving, and simply recycling the same formulas from his past albums isn't cutting it anymore. As ridiculous as it may seem, this beef is actually doing hip-hop a service. It's revealing how stale both Khaled and Drake have become within the culture. Looking back, Khaled has been a significant force in promoting a version of hip-hop that doesn't have a competitive edge. Instead, he's pushed this idea of forced collaborations and an endless cycle of friendly industry partnerships that never really pushed the genre forward. This culture of easy collaborations with little to no artistic progress has been one of the reasons why Kendrick Lamar felt the need to step up and reignite competition in hip-hop. And that's what rap needed all along: a challenge, some rivalry, some fire. Now that the competitive edge is back, and hip-hop has been evolving into something more creative, we're seeing the end of an era. Khaled's contributions are being overshadowed by the more genuine, creative force in the game. It's no longer about pushing mediocrity, and the 2023 Grammys showed exactly that. The recognition went to artists that are truly innovating and challenging the status quo, not artists who are recycling the same tired formulas that dominated the past decade. For Drake, As much as he may feel justified in distancing himself from Khaled, especially after the lack of support during the biggest moments of his career, this beef could be accelerating his own downfall. By distancing himself from these kinds of projects, where the music doesn't move the culture forward, Drake is ironically pushing himself further out of relevance in an era that's focused on progression and innovation. Without Khaled's help to sustain his legacy, it feels like Drake's era in hip-hop is fading. If Drake and Khaled, two of the most prominent figures in recent years, can't collaborate and continue with their once massive partnership, then maybe that's a good thing for hip-hop. We're finally seeing the end of the DJ Khaled era, and it's hard to say that it's a loss for the genre. As for Drake, if he's not willing to push the same old sound with Khaled's help, it's hard to see how his role in this new era of hip-hop will unfold. So, what do you think? Who's really coming out on top in this beef between Drake and Khaled? Do you think the end of their collaborations will be missed, or is it finally time for something fresh? Let me know in the comments, and if you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. It really helps me out. If you want to hear more about how Drake's beef with Khaled is just one part of his increasing frustration with the music industry, check out the suggested video.